Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is 6:12 a.m. East Coast time, Wednesday, June 26th. We're going to break down the night slate, the 9-game night slate for the MLB. My WNBA video just actually went up. It's live. Had an early morning rise to do that one. So I'm excited. There's a night slate. There's like 3 slates on Draftkings today. There's a 6-game afternoon slate. If you want my stat sheet for the 6-game afternoon slate, and I'll also do rankings for it. Not as detailed of an article as I have been doing the past couple of days for the MLB, like 1,200 to 1,500 words or so. But there will be kind of rankings for the stacks I'm using. I will be playing the afternoon slate, but I will not be making a video for it. Along with the stat sheet you're seeing over my shoulder for the early slate, that'll be on Patreon down below. A lot of people have been enjoying that. A lot of people over on Patreon supporting me, so I appreciate all of you, as well as an article and kind of a rankings for the 9-game slate will be up later today. Patreon exclusive content to give more value to the people supporting me over there. So thank you so much. So this is the 9-game slate. Let's break into it. If you're new to the channel, my name is Sal Betry. I cover daily fantasy sports in the NFL, MLB, which you're looking at, WNBA, which is a video up, NBA, which is sadly over. Like I said, NFL is soonly coming. Golf, which hopefully we get a video out today, but not sure with all the stuff on my plate after getting back from a trip to North Carolina for the weekend to look at apartments. I'm excited to be back. 4 days till my birthday. It's a good week. Let's start this thing off. 9-game slate. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button if you're seeing this. I know the amount of people that are viewing this compared to the amount of people who are subscribed. There are statistics in YouTube. I know that there's not an exact match in terms of everybody who's watching is not subscribed. So it's totally free, and it helps me keep this content being free. It allows me to make money from third parties to let me continue to do this for free for you guys. I mean, technically I'm making money elsewhere, but it's not coming at your expense, which you're subscribing allows me to build an audience, which shows other people, and just this continuous cycle of you get this free content, I get paid from somebody else. You don't get charged for this free content on YouTube. So thank you. Appreciate it. Let's get into this 9-game slate. I apologize that I do not currently have the Vegas odds out. Again, I got up. It is still very early on the East Coast, and I just checked once again, and there's only like 2 or 3 lines out, so I just didn't even put them in. I had to manually kind of enter, not all of this information, a lot of this pulls, but I had to manually enter a lot of the information that kind of pulls into this because a couple of the sites that I used were not updated yet around 5:30 when I was doing research, and as of 6, they were not again either. So I will update that for the patrons, and this will be updated over there as well. So you can support me down there. Like I said, so what do you get on Patreon? A lot of people are asking. For the MLB package, you get these sheets. You get the sheets for the slates that I don't cover in videos, like the small 6-game afternoon slate today. There's also a night game, 5-game slate. So you get those sheets, and then you get sort of an article. The past couple of days, it's been really lengthy. Yesterday was really well. A lot of people getting back to me saying they did well. Max Scherzer and Cortez Jr. It was my 2 in terms of main interest. Those were number 1 and 2 for pitching. Yankee stack was an obvious one, but I also like the Mets and Phillies yesterday in terms of stacks. And a lot of people, including myself, did well. So it's just sort of an article in terms of ranking players with analysis, somewhere usually around, 800 to 1,500 words, depends on the slate. So that's what you get over there, as well as these stat sheets. Hope that you come over. And also WNBA projections, NFL coming. So with this slate, it's interesting because the pitching's kind of ugly in terms of like, yeah, you have Patrick Corbin, you have Charlie Moore, yeah, I mean, you have stud options, but mid-range, low range, it's sort of ugly. Now, I mean, 9-game slate, you're going to have 18 pitchers. There's a couple of openers, which we'll touch on. But I do have interest early on. I jotted down right here with some quick notes, 7 pitchers. And by far, by the time 5 o'clock comes, this 7-pitcher player pool is probably going to be filtered down to 4, maybe 5, but really just 1 to 2 main guys that I want to get into my lineups, and I'll have that written up in the article on Patreon later today. In terms of Mike Minor to start the slate at $11,000, he's not one of the players that I'm getting to. Now, the matchup's beautiful against Detroit. They have a slate leading strikeout rate at 26.3%. He's working deep into the games, the deepest on the slate at 6.45 innings per start. Look, there's nothing wrong with Mike Minor, but paying $11,000 for him, he's not this top-end pitcher in my opinion, especially when you take into account the context of the slate. And, I mean, by far, lock of the year in terms of having Max Scherzer yesterday at 36 points. People trying to tell me yesterday Max Scherzer was too expensive or that he was too much money to get to the upper bats on the slate. No, he wasn't. He was $12,400. He was realistically $1,000 too cheap yesterday. Yes, I would have played him at 12.8. I would have probably played him at 13 even. That's when it starts to become a decision. When you have guys at $4,000, Cortez Jr., who is as viable as a pitcher long relief as you get, you are now only spending $16,000 on your pitching yesterday, where you pretty much do that every other slate. So, and he's still getting to Yankee bats and whoever you wanted. So, no, he was nowhere near expensive. Patrick Corbin at 10.6, although his price is coming up drastically from the $86 or $8,200 mispricing that they had him at for 3 days in a row with the rainouts. 10.6 is by far still a good price point for Corbin against Miami. Now, we've seen Corbin blow up against Miami this year, but similar to the lazy take that a lot of people had yesterday, and Max Scherzer has struggled against Miami in the past. You're picking out one occurrence where he had a bad start, and for Max Scherzer, that was like 5 innings with like 7 or 8 Ks, but he didn't get you 30 plus. He got you like 20 flat, so people say he has a bad start. I seen Corbin earlier this year. He has had a very bad start in like the single digits against Miami. Am I going to hold that against him and not play him here against this Miami team that, yes, their ISO has improved. They're up to 117 ISO. I mean, 0.4 points lower than like really anybody else on the entire slate or anybody else in the entire league, or 0.3. So Corbin 10-6, he's my first interest today. I don't have to tell you why. It's the matchup. It's the fact that he does work deep into the games. He just had a complete game, I believe. Shutout, complete game either way. People trying to say that he has fallen off or something. So 6.14 innings per game. Obviously, the strikeout stuff is there. The problem with his matchup against Miami is that he does dominate lefties more so than righties. 37% strikeout rate against lefties, 24% against righties. And like we saw yesterday, at least yesterday, there was 2 traditional lefties in the lineup, and then there's 2 switch hitters. So you can get up to 4 lefties in that lineup yesterday. Usually they run out there JT Riddle, Curtis Granderson, so you're going to get 2 lefties and a couple of switch hitters. So Corbin potentially could see only 2 lefties today, and I imagine that's the case if switch hitters are in this lineup, which they probably will be. So that does hurt him because he does give up more ISO, 171 ISO, around a little bit above league average, to only 24% strikeout rate against righties. So that being said, there's nothing dominating in this lineup. What do you have, Brian Anderson in the middle of the order? Are you really scared of Garrett Cooper? No. So Patrick Corbin 10-6 is my first player. And Charlie Morton against Minnesota, I'm not going to get there. I just don't like going to pitch guys against Minnesota. Is it a GPP contrarian play? Yeah, he'll be extremely low owned, but he's facing the team with the highest ISO. They don't strike out. Very pitcher-friendly ballpark in Minnesota, but I can't play 10-2 for a guy in Morton in this matchup when I can pay $400 more for the difference is the worst team in the league in Miami and potentially the best hitting team in terms of going up against a fantasy opponent in Minnesota. Maybe the Yankees are up there as well, so no shot. I'll just kind of jump around to my other interests here. Jake Odorizzi at $9,500. He's probably too cheap here. Now, relatively, he is appropriately priced, I would say, for the slate, but overall we've been seeing him kind of creep up to that 10K range. This matchup against Tampa Bay is no easy task. They're kind of a league average offense in terms of their strikeout rate, their overall team power and ISO. And Jake Odorizzi, the thing that he does really well is he limits damage. 0.67 home runs per 9. He's not giving up any power to lefties. That's important against this Tampa Bay team when you're going to have an Austin Meadows. You're going to have a Brandon Lowe in the middle of that lineup. You might have a Ji-Min Chow, or whatever his name is, in the middle of that lineup. Usually those are guys that are batting 1, 2, 3. Chow sometimes bats 5th or 6th. So 3 out of the top 6 bats in this lineup, at least 3, are most likely going to be lefties today. Odorizzi limits the damage against lefties, and he strikes out 31% of them. And then, I mean, you look at the right-handed side of the plate, he's still striking out 24% of them. The only real damage in terms of righties in this lineup are going to be Tommy Pham for the most part. And he only gives up a 102 ISO to them. He's pitching in the most pitcher-friendly ballpark on the year so far. Don't get tricked by his 2.58 ERA. He's more so an average pitcher at a 4.07 Sierra. Walks around 7.8% of guys. You'd rather see that lower, but the damage in terms of home runs is not there. The thing that's surprising is he doesn't get ground balls. He gives up hard hit contact, and he gives up fly balls. So the thing that I would say about Jake Odorizzi is that he's getting lucky in terms of he should be giving up more home runs. When you give up 42% hard hit contact and 48.5% of fly balls. He's giving up the most fly balls in the slate. He's giving up pretty close to a top 3 hard hit percentage. There's going to be more home runs, and there's guys in this Tampa Bay lineup that can get you in terms of power, but for the most part, he's limiting that power to the lefties and hard hit contact to lefties. So he's the second guy in my player pool. Do I have a lot of interest in him? No, and at least not as much as Corbin. And here's the thing. If I'm pitching Patrick Corbin at 10-6, Jake Odorizzi, fitting him in at 9,500, well, now I'm spending over $21,000 in terms of my pitching, and now the bats become a problem. And on a slate where there's not a lot of good pitchers, that usually means there's a lot of good stack upside. So in the nature of the slate, Jake Odorizzi is interesting to me based on the price point where he's at, the only guy in the 9K range. And realistically, it's a big drop-off after that $1,300 to Canning. But when I kind of just factor things together, I'll probably get to a lot of Patrick Corbin today, and that kind of leaves me not wanting to spend $9,500 on my SP2, especially when it's not a lock of a play, right? Third guy in my player pool, Griffin Canning, becomes interesting. He's $8,200. I think this is a price point where we could potentially look back and say, okay, that was sort of a bottom number on Canning. I believe he's closer to a $9,000 pitcher. Has he done much this year to prove that? No, he has not. He had a couple of nice starts early on before he came up. This kid, I believe, has a lot of talent. He's been faced with really difficult matchups. Today becomes more of sort of this neutral matchup for Canning. Now the ballpark's not great in LA. Especially if it's warm out there, it's going to be favoring hitting a lot more. Cincinnati, if anything, has above average ISO and strikes out below average, but for the most part, compared to the rest of the slate, they're right around average. Now the strikeout stuff for Canning has increased, especially against lefties. Righties, it's still stabilizing around average. He becomes interesting to me today because I do think the talent is there based on where the price point is, and I think his dynamic pricing is a big factor based on his recent starts. DraftKings usually will weigh that somewhat, as well as obviously the matchup. So this start against Cincinnati, oh yeah, there's power in the middle of that lineup. The power has kind of sizzled out a little bit over the past 2 to 3 weeks, though, in terms of Dietrich, Suarez. But I am not so much under the belief that Canning is a 12 to 15 point fantasy pitcher in terms of DK points. I think that the matchups have been tough for him. That's where my interest generates from, is that he's 8,200, and I do believe he's closer to like a $9,000 pitcher than an $8,000 pitcher. So I think you're getting an underpriced pitcher. Once again, do I want to spend $19,000 on bats if I do pair him with a Patrick Corbin today? Probably not, especially because it is Griffin Canning, and yes, he has a ceiling in the mid 20s to mid to upper 20s, probably touching 30 as well if he can pick up a win. But he also does have that very, very small floor like we've seen in the teens, and it's come out a lot more than usual. So 8,200 is interesting. He'll be my player pool, but he's nothing of serious consideration right now. Zach Gallen at 7,100. He came out, his first start, he looked really good, had some strikeout stuff against St. Louis, a team that doesn't really strike out that much. So now you get Washington, a team that has above average ISO. It's going to be in a ballpark that's pretty neutral so far this year in Miami, and they don't strike out that much. So they strike out similar, and they profile similar to St. Louis in the terms of their strikeout rate, both around 22% of the year. St. Louis is actually lower than this Washington team. I don't want to look too much into Gallen's first start. Only 5 innings pitched. He did pick up the win, so that did help him get up there in terms of 17 fantasy points, I believe. The bad thing is that he is on the opposite side of this Patrick Corbin matchup, so I don't like to pitch pitchers, especially on a bigger slate that are facing each other. You're automatically giving up 4 points there. They both can't get a win in the game. So he's the fourth player that I'm interested in based on price point. The matchup is scary, but the ballpark, it seems like he does have the K upside. Again, one start. I don't want to break that into a 30% strikeout rate in one start where he faced 18 or 19 batters, probably 20 batters tops. So Gallen's the fourth pitcher in this player pool, but as of right now, the only guy that I have serious consideration around it is Patrick Corbin, and that's kind of where I'm going to end up because everybody else is sort of in a difficult matchup, or their stuff based on their price point, like Odorizzi, like Griffin Canning, seems to be more so. Odorizzi seems to be tough to kind of pair with a 10-6 Patrick Corbin, and then kind of have more for bats. So Adam Wainwright would be the fifth guy that I have in here. Look, Adam Wainwright, he's not going to blow anybody away. His strikeout stuff isn't there. The thing that I like about Adam Wainwright is his price point at $7,000 is too cheap, especially based on the fact that he's going 5 2/3 innings pitched per start. So he's getting to the sixth inning much more than anybody else down here. In terms of the 7K or below range, and it makes sense that he's the most expensive guy out of them, he's by far getting to the sixth inning more than anybody else. Wade LeBlanc's the only guy kind of going that deep into the games, and we'll get to him. So Wainwright, the matchup against a team that has a lot of ISO that doesn't strike out at all, it's kind of disgusting. But the fact that he goes deep into the games at $7,000, you're looking for maybe a safer play down here. You're not going to find guys that have the greatest upside in terms of strikeout stuff down here. So this is where I would kind of lean in this mid-range is Adam Wainwright, potentially even over Zach Gallen, since I will be getting to the other end of that Washington-Miami game. So Wainwright, the fifth guy into sort of a player pool for me. 2 guys left to hit on. Right below him at 6,900, Framber Valdez. So Valdez, look, the Yankees start, yes. And don't look into his inning pitch per start, 2.5. He became a starter 3 starts ago. He was kind of a pitcher, opener, reliever before that. The Yankee start, he looked terrible. That was kind of anybody who faces an opponent is... anybody who's facing the Yankees, it's going to be difficult to really do exceptionally well. I mean, they've had their success with Verlander, with really every single pitcher they faced this year. They've been able to get them out pretty much before the sixth inning. It's been insane, this lineup out there. Now you have Encarnacion in there, obviously. Judge is back. Both of them homered yesterday. It's a very scary lineup. Torres batting 8th homered. Insanely scary lineup. But that being said, Valdez through 3 starts has had trouble with swing and miss stuff. That's never good. He's giving up contact. But 60% of that is ground balls. Now, obviously, that's going to limit his strikeout upside, but it's only 3 starts you're really looking at. And he had good K stuff in the first 2. Striking out the Yankees, again, pretty difficult matchup. They usually make contact. So I think people might be looking over him in this matchup against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh doesn't strike out at all, but they also don't have power. So this is sort of that safe play with upside in Valdez. He can work 7th, 6th inning, his first 2 starts before going against the Yankees. Pittsburgh is nowhere near as good as this Yankees team. They're more so closer, or if not worse, than his first 2 matchups. So Valdez at 6,900 becomes sort of this second play that I think, in terms of Wainwright, in terms of Valdez, yes, Valdez is a smaller sample size on what he can do. We've seen him, though, in beneficial matchups the first 2 times that he got to start this year, taking into account that Yankee start and taking that away. He's sort of the best play, I would say, in terms of 7K or below. Now, Wainwright, I would say, is the safest because there's just more of a track record there, especially this year. But safest means like 15 fantasy point upside more times than not. With Valdez, you still have that kind of 10 to 15 point floor, I would imagine, in this matchup. But the strikeout stuff, the depth that he can work into the games gives you the 20 point upside in the mid 20s. So Valdez right now, in terms of 6,900, is probably somebody who I would seriously consider pairing with Patrick Corbin. It probably becomes a mixture between Wainwright, Valdez, and the next guy that I'm about to talk about, the last guy, the seventh guy that I have interest in today, is Wade LeBlanc. And this is more so a pricing thing. Look, he's been good. He's had good outings in terms of coming in, and the nice thing about pitcher long relief, like you saw yesterday with Cortez Jr., is the second you come in the game in the second inning, you are eligible for the win. Now, his team today, are they going to be an automatic win against this Milwaukee team? No, I haven't seen the Vegas odd yet, so it's not going to be as like it was yesterday when Cortez Jr.'s team had a 7.7 team implied run total, and they were huge favorites, and it was pretty much an automatic win with him coming in the second inning. Becoming the eligible pitcher there, or as close to a lock as possible. So Wade LeBlanc, the win upside, obviously something that's nice. He has not been a good pitcher overall. 4.63 SIERA is not good. 1.75 home runs per 9 is not good. 36% ground ball rate, 41% fly ball rate, not good. Strikes out only 14% of righties. He's striking out all lefties. So overall, not good. 224 ISO to lefties, 218 ISO to righties. The only nice thing here is that he does strike out lefties, which again, you're going to find good amount of lefties with Moustakas, with Yelich in the middle of this lineup. So he's the seventh guy in my player pool. The only reason I'm listing him as an interest is because he is dirt cheap at $6,000, below $6,000, and he's likely to pitch 4 to 6 innings today, depending on how good his stuff is. The matchup is brutal. Again, this Milwaukee team has a 200 ISO. They do strike out, though. The only thing is that he gives up a ton of pop. So what you're hoping for here is if he gives up those 1.75 home runs today, 1 to 2 home runs, that they're solo shots and they're nothing that limits his upside. 5,800 makes it a lot easier for him to kind of combat that. So seventh guy in the player pool is Wade LeBlanc. So right now, recapping it, interest in Patrick Corbin, Jake Odorizzi, Griffin Canning. Odorizzi and Griffin Canning realistically a little bit less interested in, just based on price, trying to pair it with Corbin. Corbin is right now a clear-cut lock in my opinion. Don't say lock, Sal. If ownership is too high on a smaller 9-game slate compared to a 15-game slate yesterday, there's always reason to pivot up $400 to Mike Minor, who's also in a very beneficial matchup. I will say that. So Odorizzi and Canning is 2 and 3. Number 4 is Zach Gallen, and kind of this range between 7,100 and 6,900 is where I'm going to fall a lot of in terms of my SP2s. Zach Gallen, Adam Wainwright, Valdez right now kind of being the guy that I get to the most, I'd imagine. Those are the 4, 5, and 6, and then my seventh option is Wade LeBlanc. Not because I like him today. The matchup is scary. He has pitched well in terms of pitcher's long relief, but he's very hit or miss. And again, today it's just a price point at 5,800. Not a lot that I like there in terms of the power from this Milwaukee team. I'd even be interested in stacking up against him from this Milwaukee team. In terms of stacks overall, the Atlanta stack against Chicago today is something that I really do like. Yu Darvish has been getting popped from both sides of the plate. Lefties, Freddie Freeman should be going yard today, but righties are also in play. Yes, Yu Darvish has this big strikeout at 30%. I know he just went for 30-plus points 2 games ago. He was not facing Atlanta. This is a much different spot. In terms of the rest of the stacks that I have interest in today, Houston's going to be a team that stacks. I need to look at the Vegas lines overall. I do think you can stack Milwaukee. I would lean towards the righties, but obviously the power backs are the lefties in that lineup. So if you have to get to the lefties, I think that's completely fine. I mean, he just strikes them out more so than not. Detroit as a cheap stack option, I think is worth going to. If Patrick Corbin becomes over-owns in terms of like 35+% ownership, then I could go to Mike Minor there. I feel comfortable about that, and also getting couple of righties in the middle of the lineup for Miami would be even more leverage. I'm not going to do that as of now, only if some extreme ownership comes through. So that's where I'm at right now. The only other thing that I guess you can say is Chicago bats are going to look good against Keuchel, both sides of the plate there, whether it's Atlanta or Chicago. The bats look fine. Keuchel's first start was not that great, and he's really not a good fantasy pitcher. He just doesn't have strikeout stuff. He'll work deep into the games, although he didn't last time. He just doesn't have good strikeout stuff. So yeah, if you want a more in-depth breakdown of the stacks that I'm liking, I'll probably list 3 to 5 for a 9-game slate. That'll be on Patreon later today. I'll have the stat sheet up for the game as well over there, as well as the stat sheet up for the 6-game slate early in the afternoon, and I'll have a quick rankings up there. Probably not a deep article, but a quick ranking. So that's where I'm at right now. Thank you guys. Thank you, girls. Follow me over on Twitter at SalVetcherDFS for updates. I have a WNBA list over there. I post things about the MLB DFS, just DFS in general. You can hit the subscribe button and the like button. That helps me out. My name's Sal. Best of luck today, everybody. Peace out, gang.